The scream tore through the dimly lit office, startling Emma Collins as papers scattered across her desk. Her chest tightened, a wave of panic crashing against her ribs. Emma whispered, "Not again, not like this," gripping the edges of the desk until her knuckles whitened. Years of being overlooked had conditioned her silence, but this betrayal felt louder than thunder. She had discovered her project stripped of her name, handed off as if she were invisible. Emma thought of her father's words, "Stay small, stay unnoticed," words that once kept her safe, but now burned like chains. Her colleague Daniel Ward entered, raising a brow at her trembling hands. Daniel said, "You either speak now or you vanish forever." His voice was steady, brutally honest, leaving no escape. Emma's heart pounded with fear and defiance, torn between retreating into shadows or stepping into the blaze that awaited her. Emma sat frozen, her pulse pounding against the silence that followed Daniel's words. His voice had struck deep, louder than the storm outside. She whispered to herself, "What if I fail? What if I'm nothing?" The words carried the weight of years lived in shadows. Daniel leaned closer, his eyes sharp, his tone unyielding as he said, "Failure is still louder than silence, Emma." The truth stung, but something inside her stirred. She looked at the glowing screen, her stolen work staring back at her like an insult. The thought of disappearing again suffocated her, and for the first time, she questioned her father's warning to stay small. Emma clenched her jaw, her body trembling, but her eyes sharpened with defiance. In that moment, she felt the faintest shift, a spark flickering where fear had always ruled. The storm rattled the windows, echoing Emma's inner turmoil. She whispered, "I can't breathe," her voice breaking in the dark. Daniel crossed his arms, his tone sharp yet steady. "Then breathe louder, Collins. Stop waiting for permission." His words cut like steel, but beneath the cynicism was an unspoken belief in her. Emma's mind flashed back to childhood evenings, hiding behind her mother's chair while others spoke over her. That small girl had grown into this woman, still shrinking into silence. Yet now, under Daniel's relentless stare, Emma felt the walls pressing in, forcing her forward. She gripped the chair, back straightening, her fear laced with a fragile spark of courage. Emma turned toward the monitor again, her reflection blending with the cold blue glow. She whispered, "They'll laugh if I speak." Daniel's blunt reply came fast, "They already laugh when you're silent." The truth lodged like a stone in her chest. Her breath hitched as she imagined the boardroom, her name unspoken, her work claimed by others. She recalled the sharp voices of colleagues dismissing her as invisible. Emma's jaw tightened, fire building behind her nervous eyes. Daniel's gaze held steady, neither cruel nor kind but certain. Emma knew he would not rescue her, only push her. She pressed her palms against the desk, her trembling slowly giving way to resolve. Fear did not vanish, but something heavier began to shift into place. The office felt suffocating, the hum of fluorescent lights vibrating through Emma's bones. She whispered, "I can't lose this again." Daniel stepped closer, voice low and firm, "Then fight for it." His words hung heavy, raw with challenge. Emma inhaled sharply, heart hammering, as she looked at the city skyline beyond the rain-streaked glass. She thought of all the nights spent working alone, every sacrifice erased by someone louder. For years she had been quiet, obedient, forgotten. Now the storm outside mirrored the storm within, her silence breaking against it. Emma rose slowly from her chair, shoulders squared, her eyes burning with a new intensity. For the first time the choice was hers, to vanish or to be seen. Emma walked into the office the next morning, her steps steady but her stomach heavy. Whispers trailed her, colleagues glancing at her like she had already lost. She thought, every stare is a verdict. The fluorescent lights buzzed above, harsh against her tired eyes. Daniel leaned against his cubicle wall, voice low but cutting, "You're letting them write your story." His tone stung, but it was a truth she could not escape. At her desk, a stack of files with her name scratched out mocked her silence. Emma clenched her fists, forcing air into her lungs. The weight of invisibility pressed harder, yet deep inside, A defiance flickered. She whispered, "Not this time," though the words barely reached her own ears. By midday, the storm outside mirrored the storm within Emma. A meeting notice popped up, her project agenda presented without her name. She whispered, "They've erased me completely." Daniel caught her gaze, his smirk sharp as he muttered, "They'll keep doing it until you stop them." Emma's breath quickened, her chest heavy with the memory of years of being dismissed. The conference room door loomed ahead like a battlefield gate. She thought of the small girl told to stay quiet, a lesson carved deep into her bones. Yet her hands trembled with something new. Anger. She pressed her files to her chest, her heart pounding louder than her fear. The meeting began with polished voices drowning Emma's thoughts. She sat at the edge of the long table, ignored as her work was paraded under another's name. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "It's mine." Daniel's eyes locked on her from across the room, silent but demanding. His gaze said what his lips did not. "Speak." Emma's chest tightened, her breath shallow, but the memory of his words echoed. Failure is still louder than silence. She wanted to rise, but fear pinned her like an anchor. Around her, laughter and easy banter swelled, reminding her of her invisibility. Yet inside, the spark refused to dim. She thought, not forever. Emma stared at the slides on the screen, her work polished, her name erased. The presenter smiled confidently, oblivious to the storm raging in her. She whispered, "They'll never see me." Daniel's jaw tightened, his voice low enough only for her to hear, "Then make them." The words hit harder than the storm outside. Emma's palms sweated, nails digging into her notes. The old fear surged, memories of being mocked as weak echoing in her mind. Yet as the laughter filled the room, something snapped inside her. For once she wasn't shrinking, she was burning. She sat taller, her silence no longer a shield but a prison. As the meeting closed, Emma's chance slipped further. Applause filled the room for work that was hers, but credited elsewhere. She clenched her notes until they crumpled. Daniel leaned close, his voice sharp, "You're watching your life disappear." Her throat ached with swallowed words. For a moment, despair won, pressing down heavier than ever. Yet when she caught her reflection in the glossy table, something shifted. The reflection looked small, broken, but her eyes glimmered with a defiance she barely recognized. She whispered, "I won't vanish." No one else heard it, but Daniel's smirk softened, as if he had. The week dragged on, each day heavier than the last. Emma walked past the break room, hearing laughter as her stolen work was praised again. She whispered, "They don't even know it was mine." The ache hollowed her chest. At her desk an email popped up, announcing a promotion for the colleague who had stolen her project. Her hands trembled on the keyboard, fury clashing with despair. Daniel appeared, leaning over the cubicle wall, eyes sharp. He muttered, "This is what silence costs." His words hit like stone. Emma's throat tightened as memories of childhood taunts surged, reminders that she had always been easy to overlook. She clenched her jaw, refusing to cry, though the urge burned. That night, Emma sat alone in her apartment, the hum of the fridge, the only sound. She whispered, "Why can't I be enough?" Shadows stretched across her small living room, swallowing her. On the table, a framed photo of her family seemed to watch her, reminding her of the warnings to stay small. She pressed her forehead against her hands, tears slipping through her fingers. Daniel's words echoed even here, haunting her. This is what silence costs. She hated that he was right. Her chest ached with years of swallowed ambition, a fire smothered by fear. She whispered again, voice breaking, "Not enough." The following morning, Emma dragged herself back to work, her eyes swollen from the night before. At the office entrance, she paused, staring at the glass doors that seemed like barriers. She thought, "Every day I walk in smaller than I left." Inside, whispers rose again, mocking laughter like daggers in the air. Her stolen project glowed on the presentation board, now praised as innovation. Daniel caught her eye, his face unreadable, but his gaze heavy with expectation. Emma's heart pounded, her body begging to shrink away, but something inside her rebelled. She whispered, "I can't keep breaking this way." Later that day, Emma sat in a quiet stairwell, the buzz of the office muffled above her. She whispered, "I'm drowning in silence." Her voice cracked in the empty space. Daniel's footsteps echoed as he found her. He leaned on the railing, voice flat. "No one saves you here. You save yourself." His tone was blunt, not cruel, but it left no escape. Emma's hands trembled against her knees, the weight of his truth pressing down. She stared at the concrete floor, tears threatening again, but this time something sharper stirred with them. She thought, maybe he's right. As evening fell, Emma left the office under heavy rain. Her reflection shimmered in the puddles, distorted but unbroken. She whispered, "I can't stay small forever." The words sounded foreign but real. Daniel walked beside her in silence, umbrella tilted toward her, though he said nothing. She sensed his quiet challenge in every step. For years she had been overlooked, buried under shadows, but the storm outside made her feel alive, raw, undeniable. She inhaled the cold night air, her chest burning. The fear still clung, but with it came defiance. Emma thought, this isn't the end. It's the start. Emma sat in the quiet office late at night, screens dim around her, the storm having passed. She whispered, "I can't keep living small." Her reflection in the dark window looked tired but unyielding. Daniel walked in, leaning against the doorframe, his tone sharp. "Then stop talking like a ghost," he said. His words sliced through the silence. Emma felt her chest tighten, fury and fear colliding. She turned to him, voice low. "You think it's that easy?" Daniel's gaze narrowed, steady as stone. "It's not easy, it's necessary." The words hung in the air, undeniable. For the first time she didn't shrink from them. She straightened in her chair, jaw tight, fire in her eyes. The next morning, Emma stepped into the office earlier than usual. The empty desks echoed like reminders of every silence she had endured. She whispered, "No more hiding." Daniel was already there, coffee in hand, smirking faintly. "So, you finally decided to show up before the world eats you alive?" His tone was biting but strangely encouraging. Emma met his eyes without flinching, a spark glinting in her gaze. "Maybe I'm done being quiet." Daniel's expression softened for a fleeting second, then hardened again. "Good. But sparks die if you don't feed them." Emma inhaled sharply, knowing he was right. At lunch, Emma and Daniel sat across from each other in the quiet cafeteria corner. She stared at her untouched food, whispering, "What if I fail and prove them right?" Daniel leaned forward, voice blunt, "You already do every time you stay silent." His words cut deep, but they carried weight she couldn't ignore. She frowned, her fists clenched under the table. "You don't understand what it feels like," she muttered. Daniel's tone grew firm, almost heated. "I understand enough. You're stronger than you think, but strength means nothing if you refuse to use it." Emma's silence stretched, but inside, the defiance grew. Later that day, Emma returned to her desk only to find another report with her contributions erased. Her stomach twisted with rage. She whispered, "How many times will they steal from me?" Daniel appeared at her side, his jaw tight, eyes cold. "As many times as you let them," he said flatly. Emma slammed the file shut, trembling with anger. The noise drew glances from colleagues, whispers rippling across the room. For once she didn't care. Her hands pressed firmly against the desk as she stood, her breath heavy, her fear shifting into resolve. Daniel's lips curved in the faintest approval, his silence louder than words. That evening, Emma and Daniel walked out together, the city alive with buzzing neon and traffic. Emma whispered, "I'm scared, but I'm done being invisible." Her voice cracked but carried conviction. Daniel glanced at her, his tone softer than usual. "Fear is the price of every fight worth winning." She looked at him, surprised by the rare gentleness in his voice. For once the world didn't feel entirely against her. The storm inside her chest had not vanished, but it had found direction. She straightened her shoulders, whispering, "Then I'll fight." Daniel nodded once, his smirk replaced with something steadier: belief. The conference room buzzed with nervous energy as Emma entered, clutching her notes. She had prepared herself for another round of invisibility, but something felt different this time. A hush fell as the director announced, "Today we'll recognize the mind behind our latest project." Emma's breath caught, her chest tightening. She stared at the glowing slides of her stolen work, her name absent yet again. Whispers filled the room, but then the director's tone shifted. "We've discovered irregularities in credit distribution." Emma's pulse roared in her ears, her eyes darting toward the colleague who had stolen from her. His confident smile faltered under the sudden weight of scrutiny. Daniel leaned slightly toward Emma from across the table, his eyes steady, his mouth forming silent words. "This is it." Emma's trembling slowed, replaced by a strange calm. Her entire career, her entire silence, had led to this moment. The truth was pushing itself into the open. The director's words cut through the tension. "Evidence shows the contributions came from Emma Collins, not the one credited." Gasps echoed across the room. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs as though it would shatter. For years, she had begged the world to see her, and now the truth forced itself into daylight. The colleague shifted uncomfortably, his face pale, as murmurs rippled through the room. Emma's hands shook, but she whispered to herself, "It's mine. They know now." Daniel's voice broke the silence, blunt and unapologetic. "About time we stopped pretending." His eyes met hers, urging her not to retreat. Emma's lips parted, fear still weighing her tongue, but courage rose with it. She had never asked for this reveal, but the moment was demanding her presence. For once, she felt she could not hide. The accused colleague sputtered excuses, his words brittle. "It was teamwork. I only organized." The director's expression hardened, unimpressed. Emma sat frozen, her throat burning, every nerve begging her to stay silent as always. Daniel's voice cut sharply, "Say it, Emma." His words were not loud, but they were knives. She met his eyes, her pulse a drumbeat. She whispered, "It was mine," but the words barely reached beyond her. Daniel leaned forward, repeating firmly, louder. The colleague's protests faltered, the room waiting, eyes fixed on her. Emma gripped the edge of the table, the weight of decades pressing down. For the first time she lifted her chin, her voice stronger. "It was mine. Every line, every idea." The words echoed, undeniable. The silence afterward was heavier than thunder. The room erupted in overlapping voices, some praising Emma, others questioning the betrayal. Her colleague's mask cracked, sweat trailing down his temple as he muttered, "I didn't mean," but no one listened. The director silenced the chaos with one hand, turning toward Emma. "You should have spoken sooner, but today you proved you belong here." Emma's breath shuddered, her body trembling, but inside something unshackled. Years of silence fractured, replaced with a steady flame. Daniel leaned back in his chair, smirk faint, but eyes softened in rare approval. Emma whispered to herself, "I'm here." She felt it, not as a plea, but as a declaration. The shadows that had swallowed her for so long receded under the weight of her words. For the first time the room truly saw her. When the meeting ended, the colleague left in silence, his reputation in tatters. Emma lingered, her notes still clutched in shaking hands. She whispered, "I said it. I finally said it." Daniel approached, his tone softer than she had ever heard, and they finally listened. She turned to him, her lips trembling between fear and pride. "I was so afraid," she admitted. Daniel's reply was blunt but steady. "Fear doesn't disappear. You just learn to stand anyway." His honesty cut deep, but she felt gratitude swell. As the room emptied, Emma looked once more at the screen where her work glowed under her name. Her chest ached, but it was no longer from silence. It was from the weight lifting. She whispered, "I belong here," and for the first time, she believed it. The next morning, Emma stood before the glass doors of the boardroom, her reflection staring back at her. She whispered, "This is where I stop hiding." The memory of silence weighed heavy, but courage pushed harder. Daniel walked past, his voice sharp but steady. "They'll expect you to fold. Prove them wrong." His words were not comfort but challenge. Inside, senior executives shuffled papers, preparing for the quarterly review where Emma's name was finally on the project. Her stomach knotted, but her jaw clenched. Every step toward the table felt like a step out of the shadows. Fear still burned in her chest, but it no longer chained her. Emma took her seat at the head of the long polished table, papers trembling in her hands. The executives glanced toward her, some doubtful, others indifferent. She whispered under her breath, not invisible anymore. The presentation began, her slides glowing across the wall, every word hers, every idea hers. Daniel leaned in from the back row, his expression firm, silently reminding her she wasn't alone. Emma's heart thundered, but her voice rose steady as she explained her work. Doubts flickered in the faces around her, yet her tone cut through the air with clarity. For the first time, no one could ignore her. Halfway through, a senior executive interrupted with a dismissive tone. "This seems ambitious. Did you really create this alone?" Emma's chest tightened, the familiar sting of doubt rising. She gripped the remote tighter, whispering inside, "Don't shrink." Daniel's eyes caught hers, unflinching, urging her forward. She straightened, her voice calm but firm. "Yes, every part of this came from me. Years of work, every late night, every revision." The silence that followed was tense, yet her words hung with undeniable truth. Her hands trembled, but she didn't look away. For once the doubt was theirs, not hers. The questions came rapid, each one sharper than the last. Emma's voice trembled at first, then steadied, each answer carrying more fire. She thought, "This is what it feels like to fight." Daniel sat silently, arms folded, his faint nods grounding her with every word. One executive leaned back, eyes narrowing, but another leaned forward, intrigued. For years she had begged to be seen, now she demanded it. Sweat glistened on her brow, but her tone never cracked. Each doubt thrown at her became fuel, each challenge a test she refused to fail. She whispered under her breath, "I belong here." The final slide faded, the room silent, but heavy with realization. Emma's chest rose and fell, her voice quiet but strong. "This is my work, and I stand by it." The silence stretched until the director finally spoke. Impressive, bold. Murmurs of agreement followed, and the weight that had smothered her for years began to lift. Daniel's smirk appeared faintly as he leaned back, pride hidden in sarcasm. Emma sat taller, her hands steady now. She whispered, "I did it," though no one heard but her. The storm inside had not vanished, but it had transformed into something sharper, resolve. Emma walked out of the boardroom, the air heavy with silence behind her, but lighter within her. She whispered, "I'm not invisible anymore." For years, those words had lived only in her thoughts, but now they breathed into the world. Daniel followed, his tone calm. "You finally decided to fight." Emma turned to him, eyes bright but wet, her voice trembling. "I was terrified, but I didn't break." Daniel's smirk carried the faintest warmth as he replied, "That's how it starts." For the first time, Emma believed him. She felt taller, steadier, like the walls of doubt around her had cracked open. That evening, Emma sat on a rooftop overlooking the city skyline. The storm clouds finally cleared. The lights below sparkled like endless possibilities. She whispered, "I've wasted so much time hiding." The words felt heavy, but freeing. Daniel sat beside her, gaze fixed on the horizon. "Time wasted is only wasted if you don't change what comes next," he said plainly. Emma looked at him, surprised by the rare softness in his voice. She smiled faintly, the first genuine smile in years. For once the world didn't feel like it was against her. It felt like it was waiting. The next morning, Emma entered the office with her head high. Colleagues glanced at her differently, some with surprise, others with quiet respect. She whispered, "They see me now." Her desk no longer felt like a cage but a stage. Daniel walked past, voice blunt as ever. Don't get comfortable. One win doesn't mean the war is over. Emma nodded, her tone firm. I know, but I won't go back. She wasn't speaking to him alone. She was promising it to herself. For the first time, her silence was not fear, it was choice. She carried herself like someone who belonged. Later, Emma found herself mentoring a younger employee, who whispered nervously, I don't think my ideas matter. The words struck her like an echo of her past. Emma leaned forward, her tone steady but gentle. They matter. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. As she spoke, she realized she wasn't just guiding someone else. She was reaffirming her own transformation. Daniel watched from across the room, his eyes unreadable, but his faint nod carried more weight than words. Emma smiled softly, knowing the fire she had found wasn't only for herself anymore. That night, Emma stood again at her apartment window, the city lights glowing like a promise. She whispered, I was afraid, but I rose anyway. The words carried a power that once eluded her. Daniel's voice echoed in memory. Fear is the price of every fight worth winning. Her reflection stared back at her, no longer small, no longer invisible. For years, she had let others write her story, but tonight she held the pen. She closed her eyes, exhaling deeply, a quiet smile forming. The silence that once haunted her was now her companion, filled not with fear but strength.